Hello everyone, Commonwealth Realm here, and welcome to a brand new episode of Zelda Unknown. This time we will dissect the desert area, which is one of the most compelling and consistently appearing provinces throughout the series, full of secrets and untouched mysteries. And in this episode we will combine discussing the likely return of this location in Zelda Wii U with a wild theory that might explain one of the missing links in the Zelda timeline. Once again, we will begin with the gameplay demonstration by Mr. Aonuma and Mr. Miyamoto during the Game Awards, where a desert-looking province appears to be located in the western edge of Hyrule, more or less in the same spot as Gerudo Desert was in Twilight Princess. Since deserts are one of the most consistently reoccurring regions throughout the series, there's little to no doubt that Zelda Wii U will feature one as well. Even more interesting is that the desert of Zelda Wii U could be connected to the deserts in Skyward Sword, Ocarina of Time and Twilight Princess. Allow me to explain this statement, since I believe that there is a strong connection among all the desert provinces in the console Zelda games, including Zelda Wii U. And this leads us to resolving one of the greatest missing links throughout the series, acknowledging that there is a continuity among all the provinces. And in the following theory I'm about to argue for, the foundation is centered around the idea that the desert provinces in Skyward Sword, Ocarina of Time and Twilight Princess in fact are one and the same. Furthermore, I suspect that the signs I'm about to present have been intentionally structured this way by Nintendo EAD Group Number 3 when developing Skyward Sword, which was the game to fully connect together all the missing pieces in order to justify the official Zelda timeline. With this as our current source, I will now take you on a guided tour throughout the Lanayru Sand Sea and compare it to the two other previously mentioned provinces by putting the Skyward Sword footage on the bottom and the Ocarina of Time and Twilight Princess beside on the top. My first theory is that the ancient harbour, Gerudo Valley in Ocarina of Time and the uncrossable road in Twilight Princess are the same location. Before we reach the Sand Sea, I therefore want you to take notice to the similar shape of the ancient harbour in Skyward Sword, Gerudo Valley in Ocarina of Time and the uncrossable path between Lake Hylia and Gerudo Desert in Twilight Princess. The evidence beside the shape are the bridges connecting both of the paths at the edge of the harbour in Skyward Sword and the two parts of Gerudo Valley in Ocarina of Time. The connection to Twilight Princess, however, is unclear, since it's clearly stated that the road leading to the desert is impassable, most probably due to deliberate demolition in order to keep strangers out from the desert. Let's move out of the ancient harbour now, with Skipper in the direction to our first destination, the sand ship, which is located close to the ancient harbour. I want you to take a look at the layout and the shape of the sand ship and the Gerudo Fortress. Both of them seem to have a comparable shape and size if you take in consideration how much time has passed in between the two games in the timeline. This is further supported by the maps of both the sand ship and the Gerudo Fortress, which appear to match both in terms of shape and the structural division of rooms and the layout itself. For instance, the prison chamber in the Gerudo Fortress seemed to be equivalent to the entrance room in the sand ship. My theory is the following. After settling down in the area, the Gerudo found the ship and decided to take use of it. In other words, the Gerudo Fortress in Ocarina of Time might be the remaining part of what once was the sand ship in Skyward Sword. I do further believe that this move was intentionally taken by the developers in order to create the connection between the two locations. Before I move any further, I want to state that in Twilight Princess this structure is gone. Most likely it was demolished after the events of Ocarina of Time in the Child timeline, when the Gerudo race probably met with a terrible fate after Child Link warned Zelda about Ganondorf's plan. Another proof of the Gerudo Fortress origins relating to the Sand Ship can be found when looking at the map in the archery range above the Gerudo Fortress in Ocarina of Time and the training grounds. Take notice to the striking resemblance between the shapes of this area to the location north of the Sand Ship in the Sand Sea. A final link between the Sand Ship and the Gerudo Fortress might be the heavy emphasis both of these locations have on the bow and arrow. In the Sand Ship, you receive the bow after defeating the robot pirate, which is utilized by shooting the time shift stones. In the Gerudo Fortress, on the other hand, you are completely dependent on your bow to get through unseen, and if that is not enough for you, then this is also the area where you can obtain the ice arrows and upgrade to the biggest quiver. Let's move to our next destination, Skipper's Retreat. The first assumption may be that this place is connected to the Phantom Guidehouse in Ocarina of Time and the Cave of Ordeals in Twilight Princess. Regardless, the resemblance between the Skipper's house and the Phantom Guidehouse is first and foremost visible through the similar shape of the two structures as indicated on the screen. However, this does not comply with the locations of the Phantom House, the Gerudo Mesa and the Cave of Ordeals. A possibility could thus be that Skipper's house is the Phantom House, the stone monument in Ocarina of Time, but was at a later point moved to a different place. To find out of this, we will now head for the shipyard, which is located more or less in the same spot as the Gerudo Mesa and the Cave of Ordeals in Twilight Princess. This place could as well be the final location of the Phantom House or the stone monument from Ocarina of Time. One detail which could give a hint about a possible connection between the two later ones are the similar locations of the Phantom House or stone monument and the Gerudo Mesa and the Cave of Ordeals, since both structures are placed in the western edge of each of their respectable deserts. Other similarities worth to mention are that both are located at the top of a desert dune. There are stairs next to them. In addition, the entrance leading downstairs and the interiors of the Phantom House and the Cave of Ordeals consists of an underground section deep below the desert sand, and the interiors in these rooms are as well comparable. Nonetheless, we should take the size of the haunted wasteland in Ocarina of Time with a grain of salt, since it is in some extent non-proportional to the Sand Sea in Skyward Sword and the Gerudo Desert in Twilight Princess, and the locations could therefore differ. We are about to reach our final destination, the Pirate Stronghold, but before we get there we should take a quick break in the Pirate Bay leading to the stronghold. This bay appears to be located in the exactly same spot as the Desert Colossus in Ocarina of Time and the Bulblin Fortress or Camp in Twilight Princess. Furthermore, all of these seem to have a similar layout and share the function of being the final section prior to entering a dungeon or a mini-dungeon. In the case of Skyward Sword, it is the mini-dungeon Pirate Stronghold. In Ocarina of Time, the dungeon Spirit Temple, and in Twilight Princess, the dungeon Arbiter's Grounds. Several theories preceding this one have concluded that the Spirit Temple in Ocarina of Time and Arbiter's Grounds from Twilight Princess are one and the same temple by referring to their identical location deep in the western edge of each of their respective games' deserts, and through the presence of statues honoring the Goddess of Sand, which can be found in both of the dungeons. Personally, I would like to expand these theories by including the pirate stronghold from Skyward Sword as well, and point at this structure as the predecessor of the previously mentioned dungeons. This claim can be defended on several levels. First and foremost, through the fact that the location of the pirate stronghold at the end of the Sand Sea correlates with the location of the Spirit Temple at the end of the Desert Province in Ocarina of Time, and the Arbiter's Grounds as well being located at the end of the Gerudo Desert in Twilight Princess. A second argument which could further support this statement is the layout and the map of the pirate stronghold, which to a large extent consist of a comparable arrangement of rooms, similar to the ones found in the Spirit Temple and Arbiter's Grounds. With these two connections, there might be a possibility that the ancestors to the Gerudos discovered this structure and over time converted the pirate stronghold into the Spirit Temple to honor the goddess of the sand, which was once again remodeled after the events of Ocarina of Time into the prison Arbiter's Grounds. A final link that could confirm this theory is the presence of the oasis in the Desert Colossus. The official Nintendo Power Guide for Ocarina of Time from 1998 states, the oasis was the spring of what life at one time existed in the inhospitable desert. Now all that remained was a crushed layer of scorched sand where water once flowed freely. Before I move over to the next section of this episode, I would like to mention that it is likely that the Desert of Mystery in A Link to the Past and the desert in Link Between the Worlds could also fit in this theory. This might be a proof that there indeed is an unbreakable bloodline among the deserts throughout the Zelda timeline. Now we are finally ready to discuss the different components that should be included within the desert province of Zelda Wii U. In order to hold a structure in this section, I decided to divide these into 5 following categories: timeline placement, races, geography, urban environments, wildlife, and finally the dungeon of the province. We will begin by discussing how the timeline may have an impact on the desert region in Zelda Wii U. From what we know, the level of content in the deserts in Zelda games differ from game to game depending on their timeline placement. And since the beginning of the series, the desert province has been recognized by stark contrasts, ranging from being full of life to being completely deserted and infested with enemies. Nevertheless, it is crucial to understand that the sole reason for these contrasts are heavily interconnected with Ocarina of Time and the events during and after the game. In the aftermath of Ocarina of Time in the child timeline, the Gerudo race was most likely either exterminated, left unable to reproduce, or simply driven out of Hyrule by the Hylians, leaving their homeland in ruins and turning their most sacred temple into a prison for the worst criminals of the kingdom. Zelda Wii U's desert province will therefore heavily depend on whether the game takes place before or after the events of Ocarina of Time. If the game takes place before Ocarina of Time in the timeline, it will mark the possibility for a living and diverse region. One of the aspects that will benefit from Zelda Wii U taking place before the events of Ocarina of Time will be the presence of several races in the province. Could mark the possibility for a return of the Gerudo race, a race that has only appeared 3 times in the series, excluding Ganondorf, and has been absent from the series since 2005 and Four Swords Adventures. Maybe Zelda Wii U will tell the origin story and rise of the Gerudo race and star a young Ganondorf in the wake of the Hyrulean Civil War, which could mark the end of the era of peace, of prosperity for the kingdoms and races of Hyrule. This could also pave the way for a return of the ancient robots from Skyward Sword, which origins derives from the Lanayru Desert province. This assumption is based on the E3 reveal of Zelda Wii U, where a giant monster, possibly powered by ancient technology, appeared. Furthermore, the design of the robot pirates from Skyward Sword heavily resembles the monster from the reveal through the lightning on their bodyworks. Could we possibly get a more advanced or evolved version of the ancient robots in Zelda Wii U? As previously stated, the geography of Zelda Wii U's desert province will heavily depend on the game's timeline placement. Everything from a prosperous to an abandoned area is possible. Still, what intrigues me is the vast size of this province in Zelda Wii U, which could be the size of the entire overworld in Twilight Princess. And if it's not proportionally filled with content, this might become a glaring issue. This was the case with Gerudo Desert in Twilight Princess, which was the largest but at the same time the most lacking desert province to appear in the series. Apart from the Cave of Ordeals, there was little to no reason to return to this area until accessing the Twilight Realm. And with the desert province in Zelda Wii U being up to 10 times the size of this province, this might become a challenge. Another question is related to the giant black hole appearing in the middle of the desert. Some have speculated that it could be Ganondorf's hideout. At the same time, I believe that the developers will be able to create a realistic desert province where you will be required to adapt to the local conditions, which might appear as uninviting when exploring this province for the first time. Could this lead to new methods or ways to cross the vast desert, such as leaving Epona back in Hyrule and traversing the desert on, let's say, a camel? Truth to be told, the desert provinces in the series have never had a full-blown town. The closest to this point were the Gerudo Fortress in Ocarina of Time and the Pirate Fortress in Majora's Mask. This is why I hope that Zelda Wii U will feature a full-blown desert town influenced by Middle Eastern old towns and hopefully include a large bazaar with narrow alleyways and a unique arsenal of weaponry, such as a specific sword which will not be obtainable or for sale in other provinces of the game. In this case, a great advantage would be dynamic and individual NPCs with longer voice dialogues and intelligent reactions to Link, since this would be a great way to showcase the Gerudos as the compelling and fascinating race which they are, and I think I speak for all of us when I state that we would love to learn more about them and their origins in Zelda Wii U. Nonetheless, there must be activities outside a passable town or villages, and this is why I would love to see a larger extent of enemies apart from the ones that already are established in the series. Good examples to introduce or bring back would be the snakes from the original Legend of Zelda, the Araka aka the scorpions from Skyward Sword, and other desert animals such as vultures, camels, coyotes, hyenas, tortoises, poisonous spiders, and some stronger enemies such as the 1000-year-old Moldarach from Skyward Sword, which by the way featured a lot of new desert enemies. Zelda Wii U should introduce a new mechanic here as well, this being hunting and crafting the prey and then bringing these to the bazaar in the provincial town for further weapon and bag upgrades. To be honest, the dungeons in the desert areas in Zelda games to this point are some of the most memorable in the series. Just take a look at the Spirit Temple, located at the end of the desert with the child and adult section, solid enemy AIs and the mirror shield as the dungeon item. This dungeon does not disappoint. The boss Twinrova is one of my favorite in Ocarina of Time and is a great way to finish the last regular dungeon before confronting Ganondorf. The same can be said about Arbiter's Grounds in Twilight Princess, an extremely solid dungeon from the moment you enter, which excels a couple of levels after defeating the mini-boss Death Sword and obtaining the spinner, which is perfectly implemented in the two-phase boss battle against Twilight Fossil Stalord. The The sand ship in Skyward Sword, on the other hand, is a great example of a non-linear dungeon divided into two sections, where you first explore the abandoned ship and ultimately fight the robot pirate to obtain the bow. In the second half, you use this iconic Zelda item to activate and deactivate the time shift stone at the top of the ship in order to proceed further in the dungeon. Unfortunately, the boss, Tantalus, does not share the same level of creativity as the rest of the dungeon. As a closing statement for this section, I deeply hope that this is the last time we see a boss in a console Zelda game where his main weakness is a giant glowing eye. I expect that Mr. Eiji Aonuma and his team will keep their promise and make the search for the dungeon into a quest in Zelda Wii U of itself, and in some extent include references from desert cultures within the dungeon and possibly in some of the puzzles. Overall, I can say that the desert province in Zelda Wii U seems to be an area full of potential and great heritage from prior titles, which should both be improved and expanded in terms of the categories we now went through. The possibility for a return of both the Gerudo race and the version of the ancient robots and the ancient technology is exciting, since both of the races have proven to be worthy of the respective region, and the ancient technology might bring new life to this previously desolate area. That is all for this episode of Zelda Unknown. I hope you enjoyed this video and want to like, share and comment. And if you really want to see more episodes of Zelda Unknown, then I would be highly thankful if you subscribe, since it really helps me out to create new episodes with improved quality for all of you. The next episode of Zelda Unknown will be uploaded on February 5th and take on Lake Hylia. Until then, this was the Commonwealth realm and I will see you later.